Hello and welcome to an episode of Podcast of the Rings. I'm Jessica Lynn Verdi. I'm joined in person by Alex Mitchell.
Hi.
Hi. We actually are looking at each other in the eyes, not on Zoom or StreamYard. He's in my apartment. Help.
Yes, please send help.
Hi, Alex.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
How's LA finding you?
I haven't asked. I don't know. I don't know how it feels, but I feel pretty good.
I mean, the weather's definitely better than where you came from.
Oh yeah, I live in Chicago, and it definitely was the first big snow when I left. So perfect timing.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you here too, because your body form is much different than your internet form.
Yes.
Right, like incredibly different. So now that there isn't like the Rings of Power, and now that another creator hasn't died, so we should watch their show or interpretation.
Thank God.
I know. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's not. We don't have a lot of impetus as to what to do next.
Sure.
We sort of decided to go from the beginning-ish of what spurred Tolkien's world.
Right.
And so we're kind of starting with the first Hobbit iterations and talking about the Hobbit and certain things. But before we do that, we're going to do our tradition.
Yes.
For the second time ever.
The new tradition. We're making it a thing.
But the best part is, because you're here with me physically, you get to choose which card. So for those of you that didn't tune into last episode, Alexander got me a 6-month anniversary dating gift. And it's the Tolkien tarot deck, which is really cool. I'm sure there's several different iterations of it, but someone's beautiful illustrations. And last time we pulled a really apropos one. So now I'm doing a shuffle.
It was the
Something
beginning, beginning our journey was the sort of read on that card.
Kind of wild.
Very fitting.
Yeah. And obviously these mean nothing, or they mean everything, depending on how you look at it in the world.
Both at once.
I'm just going to splay them out for you.
Yeah, that
Alex.
is a grip of cards.
You choose which one you want, babe.
All right, let's go kind of towards the middle. I'm going to go a little bit in because this one is poking out. I'm going to choose this one.
That's the one you want. All right,
yes.
So that's the way you had it.
Mm-hmm. Should I show you my card?
I'm trying to, no, because I'm the one who's serving it, and it's justice upside down.
What? Oh yeah, there's the whole inverted thing. Can I see the art on this?
Yeah, while you make a lot of noise.
Okay, I mean that's gonna be a thing. So this looks like I can't tell if this is a wood elf.
It's Legolas.
It is Legolas. Okay, I couldn't tell because again, this is not any art I'm familiar with, but he is holding his bow and knocking an arrow. And he is in the woods somewhere. I don't know.
With the perfectly balanced arrow, Legolas's aim is true, and each shot lands at the center of his target. Justice asks that your vision be just as clear in seeking the heart of the matter.
Be justice clear?
Oh my God.
Oh wow, that one got you.
So, for those of you that know me from the internet, Justice League sounds like justice.
Yeah.
So, because Jessica. And when I was a kid, when people would say just because, it sounded like Jessica.
Mm-hmm.
So, just as that you got there. It was pretty just as. Wow. So this was reversed. And this says, have you been questioning someone's integrity? Is your intuition telling you that a situation isn't trustworthy? The reverse justice card confirms your suspicions, but cautions you to not seek revenge. Take the high road and let karma work its magic. Here's what I think this means. For you. For us.
Okay.
I don't think you trust that this is going to be an interesting episode.
Honestly, yeah.
And it's probably not going to be. I think you're
But it
wrong.
said I shouldn't take revenge. So
I think you just need to go with the flow and let this be the episode that it's going to be.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, people know a lot about Tolkien or they don't, but they're just coming here to hang out with us.
I guess, yeah.
No, yes. I mean, I can't convince you, but I know that that's at least how I approach podcasting.
Sure.
It's like, hey, folks that listen to us, you're in on the conversation, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to listen to us, you have many choices for podcasts. And if you don't like this episode, go somewhere else.
Sure.
I don't know. Okay, so this week Alex has been. I think we mentioned that Alex and I have been rereading the trilogy, but then stopped after the Fellowship of the Ring and went backward to the Hobbit.
Gotta go back in time.
Gotta go back into or down to Goblin Town.
Or down to Goblin Town. Yes.
So we had to go. We went to Hobbit, and we're almost finished with it.
Yeah, we're a few chapters from the end. We just finished up. Which was
the chapter where all the dwarves, the unlucky chapter where all the dwarves go into Smaug's lair when they are fairly certain Smaug isn't there.
Well, yeah, they don't know.
They have no idea.
Yeah.
But the suspicion is that he's not there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Bilbo had already found Arkenstone, or this time he found it.
He finds and yoinks it.
Right. And I told you I had a dream about the Arkenstone. But
no.
Oh, I did tell you. No, I did. My dreams are incredibly intricate in the most annoying way, but I think Alex humors me when I tell him about them because
I go, "Yep, makes sense."
Totally. No, they don't, because the narrative is incredible at times, and it really does span the majority of my sleeping time. But in my dream, it was some sort of challenge or something like a 5-layered apartment complex, and we had to find something, and I found the Arkenstone, or someone was taking it from me. But the Arkenstone, it was the Arkenstone, but it wasn't. It was like, like those Smarties, or like like kind of like a sugary candy, like a powder sugary candy. Yeah. It was the ball version of those. I don't know if you've ever had them. I know they're not amazing, but like if you
not like a gumball.
It's that shape with like a rim around it.
Oh, I think I have had them like 1 or 2 times.
It's like a knockoff Smartie, but gigantic, and it's like you basically are just sucking sugar.
Sugar, yeah.
But that was it was a pink, powdery pink one, like Arkenstone.
You did not tell me about this dream, but it's amazing.
I told you that I found an Arkenstone in my dream, or that there was an Arkenstone, but I didn't tell you what the Arkenstone was. It's wild.
So when you're telling me about dreams, you're just only scratching the surface.
Here's the thing: I can't tell you more than what I tell you, because what I tell you, it already takes 5 minutes to explain parts of it. And then to get to that level of detail with you, you would hate me, I think.
Yeah.
It's too much. Our guest, Antimo, when Anthony Crumb was on.
When he described what it was like.
When he described telling improv was like a dream, I was like, oh, but I've done both.
Yeah.
But I
committed
can't.
Both of the cardinal sins.
I'm the worst person, so I can't give you all the believe me, that apartment was yellow. There were 17 different people there. There was so many different things going on, and including a Smartie Arkenstone.
Now, did you then use the Smartie Arkenstone to try to prevent a battle between 3 different groups of races?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so, but I think I'm also lying because there's so many things in that dream. I just don't want to bore you.
Yeah, exactly.
So I remember while we've been reading through this, just as what we want to do in the next episode is once we finish the Hobbit, we'll talk about our actual feelings about the book itself. And I have several questions, and we're gonna just focus on at least one half or the whole book of the Hobbit, and then jump into the Peter Jackson trilogies.
Oh yes, and I am
looking not forward to that.
Well, I've already done with my Twitch community. I've already done watch-alongs of the first 2 films because I haven't seen them since they were in theaters. I saw the theatrical release, and I actually was one of the people who liked the 3D and like the high frame rate. Because they filmed them at 48 frames a second, which is weird if you're not used to it, but I enjoyed it. So we're going to be doing a watch-along of the 3rd one, Battle of 5 Armies, the extended edition, which I've never seen. I've only seen the theatrical cuts. So I'm looking forward to talking about those.
Well, and I've never seen them.
Oh, at all?
I never. Version? I only watched a little bit with your community, but mostly just to support you because I like you. Yeah. And I was just sitting there while I think I was playing Civ 6 at the same time.
I don't blame you for not getting engrossed because they're...
I think I didn't want to because I didn't watch the first one, and this was the second one.
It was the second one.
And so I didn't want to overly invest myself into something that I wanted to experience freshly as much as possible, for good or for worse. Like, and I know a lot of people have opinions on it. I've shared this in several different ways on several different platforms. If I'm enjoying something, I'm just gonna probably just enjoy living there and being there. You know what I mean? So I'm excited. And I love Martin Freeman.
Oh,
so much. And I think it'll also help once that we've finished The Hobbit. I think I mentioned on this podcast that I feel like I had read The Hobbit because I was gearing up to read the trilogy again.
Right.
I didn't. I think that's another dream I had. I was like, oh yeah, I finished The Hobbit.
Yeah.
But I think what happened is I read like the first couple of pages of the first book, like my experience was when I was in 7th grade. I went, this is trash.
Yeah.
This is way too much information. And I'll just jump to The Fellowship. And then I think I started 2 pages of The Fellowship and didn't.
Oh yeah. If you think the preamble of The Hobbit is too much,
it's not. That's it. So I think I realized this too on this podcast. The Hobbit was the first full-fledged book I had read. Like
really?
That wasn't made for 5-year-olds or made for people that were 12. I know it's a kid's book, but
it was made for a younger audience,
a smarter younger audience.
Yes.
Than
and it's funny in doing some, a little bit of research on this book, more than the stuff I knew. Tolkien actually, I think in a letter he wrote, I can't remember to who, said he regretted a lot of his choices in the first version because something we might get into is there was a second edition released before the release of Lord of the Rings, and he went back and
retconned a lot.
Yeah, he retconned stuff and rewrote some stuff to make it fit with his Silmarillion lore. And he attempted to like rewrite the whole thing, and he realized he didn't have enough time and couldn't put the effort into it. But one of the things he said he wanted to do with it was be a little bit less condescending in terms of the language and some of the ways he wrote the book towards children. Because this was a kid's book, and he felt like when he went back to it, he's like, maybe some of the devices I used and the language I used was a little bit too like
interesting.
I don't know the word.
Heavy-handed or diminutive.
Because when we were reading through this, there are moments where
the narrator literally breaks the fourth wall.
Yes, as if he is, telling a story to kids around a campfire or a bedtime story or whatever. And it's cute and fun, but I think Tolkien realized when he was connecting this to the Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion that tonally it's very
so
different.
Disparate.
Yeah.
But also, because I'm not reading the condescension in the way he breaks the fourth wall. But now that I'm thinking about it, and this is something we talk about with improv, is operate at the height of the audience's intelligence.
Yes.
So don't. The condescension comes with the fact that he feels like he needs to break the narration and say, well, you already know this. And he's not lying. He's probably is directly relating to them as the narrator, but we probably don't need the narrator to do that.
Right.
And he doesn't need, he can, I think if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly and I'm applying it to what I've learned, assume that the audience is going to come along. Yeah. And I'm sure there's a world where he couldn't have imagined kids were going to actually like it. I mean, you don't really do something as an artist and go, people are going to hate this.
Yeah.
But he didn't know. I don't think he knew.
Well,
right?
So to get into the origin,
which is what we're here to do today. I don't think we clarified.
Yeah. Yeah. So the germ of the Hobbits.
Ew.
The origin.
Well, no, germ is also
the seed.
It's the seed. That's the actual. That's the what you call seeds, like germination.
Yep.
I know this because I got first place in my 6th grade science fair. I went all the way to the LA County Science Fair and got honorable mention.
And your thing was on germs?
It was on do soil amendments affect plant growth? And I had to learn what a seed did and why it did what it did and list all the parts of the seed and then control the variables and then test it. And then I had to make a 3-panel explanation, and I had different places. I had to learn how to glue and use an X-Acto knife, and I had to have a theme and a color palette and everything. It was a very in-depth, mostly done by my aunt project.
Sure, as most science fair projects
To be fair, though, it was more that she was there with me guiding.
Yeah.
And like to the point where my parents couldn't have helped me get that kind of in-depth like go that in depth on it.
Yeah.
But I learned so much and then I forgot it all.
Oh yeah.
But it was
as someone whose father worked in science and everything, I relate.
Totally.
Where it's like, let me help you out.
Yeah.
With this
well, no, and again,
project.
she would task me as for things I wouldn't have done myself. So she goes, okay, now you need to research this. All right, the next thing you need to research is that. Well, what do you think we should do next?
Yeah.
So she was more guiding me as opposed to doing it, but like absolutely did do major chunks of it by guiding me.
Totally. So the germ of The Hobbit was Tolkien was a professor. Which college? I wrote this down. He was at
Oxford, right?
Well, at the time he was
professor.
at Pembroke College, and he was grading.
There's
papers.
also several Oxfords.
Yes. He was grading papers, and I guess he was like a lot of college professors, just bored out of his mind. And so he wrote on the back of one of these papers, in a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit, which is like the kind of the germ of the Hobbit. And he had no idea what a hobbit was. He just wrote that down.
Stop. Elaborate and listen. That was what You Don't Know Nick section. Stop. Calibrate and listen. So we would calibrate to see where he was on like the generation scale. So anyway, stop, elaborate, we collaborate and listen. That's absolutely incredible. I'm just gonna put a pin in that because I have something to say about it. But continue.
Okay. So he did that, and then eventually he like came back to it and wrote this story, and lent. I don't know exactly who this person was, but lent the manuscript to someone who showed it to the 10-year-old son of a man named Sir Stanley Unwin. I don't know how you say that.
And this is the publisher, right?
Yes, Allen and Unwin. I'm going to go with Unwin.
Sure, Unwin.
Like an onion.
Mm.
Allen and Unwin. So he lends it to this woman who shows it to this.
Why?
I think from what I read, she was like sick at the time, so maybe it was like, hey, here's something to read. You know, this is back in the 30s.
When you're just literally either dying in bed or...
Yeah, there's no television.
Right.
You have radio, I guess.
Yeah. But you're going to rot your brain so you don't listen to the radio all day.
Exactly. Yeah, those radio waves, they're bad for you.
I mean, there are people who would really believe that. So.
I bet there are. And they don't realize they're being inundated with them.
Well, that's it.
Every second.
So there's people that believe when radios first started coming up that there was the major sickness, which was the Spanish flu.
Oh, okay.
And that's why they believe when 5G was installed, that's why a bunch of people got sick with COVID.
Oh, because 5G are radio waves.
It's definitely an electric, it's affecting our vibrations.
Disclaimer, no, it's not. Okay.
You don't know.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do. So he lent it to this woman who showed it to this the 10-year-old son of this guy, and he paid his kid, I don't know what it was, to like review the book.
Oh. And
he gave it a good review. I don't know exactly. I'm sure there's the review is out there. I didn't look it up.
Oh, that's such a cute idea.
He gave it a good review, and then Stanley was like, all right, let's like pick this up for publishing. So that's how The Hobbit came to be a book. It was just scrawled on the back of a term paper, or I don't know if it was a term paper, but a paper, happened to get lent or, given to this woman who shows it to this kid who likes it. And then his father, who's the head of this publishing company, goes, all right, well, my kid likes it, gave it a good review, let's publish it.
So that's what, did he hand back the paper he was grading to this person that turned it over and then went, the heck is that?
That's a very good question. I don't know. And I would imagine that if you had a professor like Professor Tolkien, you would probably be used to weird things like that on your papers, maybe. Like he's just practicing his, Elvish Tengwar scripts, and you get that back on your paper. You're like, what the hell is this?
So had he done any of the Elvish work before then?
Yeah.
Oh, so...
Yeah.
So the world, how much of the Silmarillion and stuff was fleshed out before.
I
fleshed
don't
out.
know percentage wise or like what, but the Silmarillion was something he had worked on in different forms his whole life. He was writing that in the trenches in World War I. So that mythology and that world he had been creating for a long time. Then when he goes and scrawls, in a hole in the ground there lives a hobbit, that's completely unrelated. That's just a funny little thing he did and wrote a kid's story, and it gets published. And then, so Allen and Unwin Publishing gets bought out by Houghton Mifflin, and then Houghton Mifflin is the publisher. And then they sort of, in the 50s, they go, you know what? We'd love a sequel.
How about this? Are you ready? Rayner took to the book ferociously and returned a few days later with a handwritten report. Here's what he said. Bilbo Baggins was a hobbit who lived in his hobbit hole and never unfit for adventures. At last Gandalf the wizard and his dwarves penswaddled him to go. I don't know. He had a very exciting time fighting goblins and wargs. At last they got to the lonely mountain. Smaug the dragon, who guarded it and is killed. Who guarded it is killed, and after a terrific battle with the goblins, he returned home-ish or soon. I don't know.
Home-ish.
Something home dash something. The book. With the help of, oh my gosh, this kid does not need any illustrations. With the help of maps, the book, with the help of maps, does not need any illustrations. It is good and should appeal to all children between the ages of 5 and 9.
Well,
this is what the kid wrote.
What was the kid's name again?
Rayner.
Rayner. Sorry to burst your bubble, but the amazing illustrations by Tolkien
Only
were included.
Rich.
Yeah, and they're great. What?
Someone translated it. I didn't need to read his actual handwriting.
Oh, I'm glad you did though.
It's wonderful.
I'm glad we had that experience.
So this is the one I was missing. Smaug the dragon who guards it is killed after a terrific battle with the goblins. He returned home. Rich.
Oh, not ish.
Ish. I couldn't.
Home-ish.
Oh my god.
Well, yeah, I think Rayner is spot on there. I think, 5 to 9. I think wider age range than that.
He's a 10-year-old.
Sure. So he's like, well, a kid's younger than me. Yeah. I first read it in. Wait, how old are you in 5th grade?
You're like 11 or 10.
Yeah. So okay, around there. But maybe kids back then were smart. 9 back then was 12 now. I don't know.
Was it an 18-year-old's level?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Oh, you can go work in the factory when you're 10. Yeah, it's fine.
What does the factory do, Dad? You'll find out when you work there. What I love though about the fact that he just wrote down there was a hobbit that lived in his hobbit hole. He was like channeling something. He had to be. It was
I don't know. He believed in God, divine inspiration, maybe.
Well, and there's I tell the story completely incorrectly because I forget the two people who it happened to, and it was either Neil Young and Bob Dylan, or Bob Dylan, Neil Young telling the story about him and Bob Dylan, or Bob Dylan and Sting, and it's not really Sting, and it was Tom Petty and Bob Dylan or something, and Tom Petty's telling the story. Basically, they're walking down a bridge in the middle of nowhere, or across a bay or something. Like they're just in the middle of a river, crossing a bridge. This is the dumbest.
What?
I know. What Neil Young is trying to illustrate is there's no one around them, and they're like walking on a boardwalk or something like that. And in that moment, Neil Young comes up with a song, probably like Harvest Moon or something like that.
Okay.
And he swears that if the idea just moved over a half a foot, it would have hit Bob Dylan and it wouldn't have hit him. It wasn't that he invented the song; he discovered it, and he just hit the wavelength, or like the Freudian train is the way I describe it. A Freudian train. There's people that believe that like everything exists and you just get on the rails.
Is that a Freud thing?
I believe so.
Okay, I've never heard that term.
Yeah, but anyway, that like, Tolkien was operating on such a wavelength in that world that he was always, when you're enveloped in something, the hobbits were just waiting to be unearthed.
Yeah, well, and this is something he says, and the way he talks about his world is like that, where the example I go to is when he talks about, someone wrote him a letter asking about the Entwives and what their fate was, and or what happened to them, and he says, well, I'm not sure. I'd like to believe it was this or this, but it could have been this. And so the way he talks about it is this world exists outside of himself. It's not like, well, I haven't written it, so I don't know. It's like, oh, now if I think about it, these are the possibilities, and I haven't discovered what it is. So it's, and also the way he wrote the story, like we've talked about with Galadriel, is another example that I like to go to, where the fellow, he was writing Lord of the Rings and the Fellowship. He got to the point where they're out of the Mines of Moria, and he goes, oh, there's an elven kingdom here, and it has a queen. And who's that queen? Galadriel. Like,
so in a even more,
he's discovering these things as he goes.
He's
along.
on the journey as he's writing it. So like which again, that's why in The Hobbit, which we'll talk about this when we just talk about The Hobbit, the book itself, there are stone throwing giants, and there might have been at that time, or there could have been stone throwing giants in a previous iteration.
So yes, because of the way that this was written, there are things that don't
correlate exactly
100% like line up with Lord of the Rings. I would say most of it does, and
totally.
That is one thing that I would like to talk about. So we have the first edition coming out in he wrote it in the late 20s, and it's released September 21st, 1937, with his illustrations. And then when Houghton Mifflin comes to him and says, like, we want a sequel, he pitches them the idea of I think he pitches Silmarillion first, and they they basically say no.
Unsurprising.
Yeah. And I think it's in the Council of Elrond. He says, where they're talking about these things that happened in previous ages. And he goes, well, we won't get into that here, but it's recounted elsewhere in another book or whatever. And sort of like
hinted towards.
Yeah. And I think a very sly way of being like, oh, do you want to know more about these tales? Like,
tell your local publisher.
Yeah, exactly.
Call your local library and request this book be available. That's actually really smart. Have you ever heard this about tangentially Star Trek, which has a lot of crossover in the fandom world? The in-joke was saying its 5-year mission was in hopes of getting the show to live for at least 5 years, so it could get into syndication.
That's
the whole thing.
Threshold?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
Oh, I see.
Which then, begets a really interesting thing. What kind of toll does it take on a person to be in space for 5 years? And it's something they explore later on in like the movies and stuff. The Kelvin timeline, I think the second movie or the third movie, they're like, this is the worst, being out here forever.
Yeah, but you're in a utopia. You have replicators and a holodeck.
Yeah, but you are... I can just understand finding ennui with anything,
Oh, sure. I mean, yeah, humans love to do that. Regardless of how good the situation is.
So I love that, though. It's kind of like, I love that. It's like, no, I can't say that because we're a PG-13 podcast. Carry on. But use your imagination.
Yeah. In 1951, prior to the release of Lord of the Rings, he publishes the second edition in order for The Hobbit to be more in line with the upcoming Lord of the Rings and his previous lore in the Silmarillion. So there's a couple of changes. I mean, there's many changes, but
significant changes.
The big one is that in the original 1937 version, Gollum was very different. Obviously.
Well, not obviously.
I guess not obviously.
Because
but
if you didn't read it, you don't know that.
Right.
You would have no reason to know that.
Right. So in the riddle game chapter, where Bilbo finds himself in this dark cave underneath the mountain, he encounters this creature. Gollum is still kind of sinister and everything, but he is
not trying to eat him.
He does say, like, if I win, I'm going to eat you.
Oh, okay.
But he is honorable. So they do the riddle game, and when so the prize if Gollum wins, is that he gets to eat Bilbo. And then the prize if he loses is he says, "Oh, I'll give you a present," which is going to be his magic ring.
Oh.
So in the second edition, it's "I'll show you the way out." Right?
Which is, I mean, great.
Yeah. So they do the riddle game and everything. And there's various little changes, but Bilbo obviously wins. And Gollum says, "Okay, let me go get your prize." And he goes, "Oh no, my magic ring, it's gone. Okay, I guess I'll show you the way out." So he just is very friendly after he loses and goes, Tolkien kind of describes it as, well, you don't cheat at the riddle game. It's a sacred old tradition amongst these creatures.
So Bilbo happens upon the ring still.
Yes.
Even though Gollum was just going to give him the ring.
Yes.
That's dumb.
Well,
it's just dumb.
It's not as good.
Tolkien, give me a call. Just give him the ring.
You got some notes.
I got notes.
Yeah.
Did it still make him invisible in that iteration?
Yeah, the ring is the same.
He needed it too, because everything else, the ring is the ex machina of the whole friggin' thing.
It helps him
do
along
everything.
His quest. Yes. But in the version we know that was released in the 50s, obviously he goes, okay, well, if I'm going to have this one ring be this corrupting influence, I'm going to have to change Gollum a little bit.
Right. I love that the framework was there. You know what I mean? Like it didn't need, that character didn't need to change much, and it makes sense that it's almost like he gave himself the pathway to make Gollum who he ends up becoming.
Yeah, and he does one of the things I was reading through where someone had gone through, and props to whoever did this, but it was on some old forum. Someone had gone through and put all right, here's the first edition, here's second edition of every single change.
Wow.
Wow. And one of the things he does change is in his descriptions of Gollum. In the second edition, he describes him as thin and pallid, and wasn't described like that in the first edition.
Interesting. How was he described?
I don't remember the exact.
Oh, come on.
But go look it up, folks.
I will say this though, I don't know if we touched on this when we were talking about the Rankin and Bass version. That Gollum is a really weird, he looks like a frog.
Yes,
person.
He's amphibious.
It's very interesting.
The Rankin and Bass.
It's not like they didn't know that Gollum was a former Hobbit, right?
No, yeah, that movie was made in the 70s.
So they would have known, because in the book, the background of Smeagol is talked about, right?
Yes.
So they would have known. Anyway, whatever.
They make some interesting choices,
and you know what? Kudos to them.
And I wonder,
the more
Smaug is a cat.
I was just
Gollum
gonna say,
is a frog kind of thing. Some of
the elves from the Wood Elves are really upsetting.
It's weird.
But the more we read about Smaug in our reading of it, the more I really can understand the choice of him being a cat. Now, I think I would have designed him a little bit differently. I wouldn't have made him so whiskery. But my cat, my blue Russian blue, he's like Smaug. Not as smart, but definitely like Smaug.
Yeah, just he's always breathing fire
and sleeping.
Yeah. Instead of a mound of gold that's in a box.
It's a mound of poop.
If cardboard boxes came in large enough sizes, Smaug would have been.
Smaug would have been all in it.
Yeah.
All about it.
So that's the big change from...
Where does Smaug poop? Seriously.
I mean, probably
Does he just poop in the gold?
I don't know. Well...
So he scoots around some gold in the corner? Like, no one's talking about, look at this big dragon turd.
I would imagine there's some deep, dark hall that he just uses.
He doesn't move.
Well, but here's the thing about dragons. I would imagine that their metabolism is such that they don't need to poo that often.
I doubt you're wrong. I
Why?
bet. What if it's similar to how an owl pukes up pellets?
Maybe. Could be.
How do dragons reproduce?
Eggs.
Yeah, so do owls, right? It tracks.
Sure,
It
but
all tracks.
But I think
How do lizards poop?
I don't know.
I really need to know the answer to this.
I don't think it's pellets. I think that's a uniquely owl thing.
Because it's also a dragon cat. So who's to say, if anything, that anyone's going to be right about this?
Yeah. Let's just be grateful Tolkien never got into
I
that.
want to know now. Is he moving around poop like a litter box and it's gold instead of litter?
Maybe he poops gold.
That would not make sense then, because he wouldn't steal hordes.
That's what doesn't make sense.
He wouldn't steal hordes of gold.
Why not?
If he pooped gold.
Maybe it's just a lower quality, a lower grade.
Unrealistic.
That's okay. That's where you draw the line.
That's where I draw the line. No one's talking about how that chamber smells like poop. That's just all I'm saying.
They do talk about the stench
of the dragon.
Yes, that's all encompassing. That's the breath, the odor, the BO, the poo.
Then I want to know where he does it.
I mean, it's probably all over the place then, I would imagine.
Oh. No, I think he just sleeps and poops.
Maybe.
Maybe you're right. It's like a hibernation thing.
Yeah, it's like a bear where they just like hibernate and they don't do anything.
Do you know how bears don't poop?
They like eat a bunch of things to block themselves up.
It's very sad.
It's not sad.
It's brilliant. It's just really upsetting.
Why?
Because we're talking about poop.
Wouldn't it be more upsetting if they just didn't do that and it was just like a free-for-all when they hibernated?
Well, that's what I think Smaug's doing now.
I don't know. Maybe he blocks it up.
Maybe he does. Maybe that's why he needs gold, is to block.
He eats the gold.
To block him out.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We figured it out. We got there.
I got there.
So the difference
Important work, people.
Jesus Christ. All right, so Gollum is a difference. The big one. Smaug pooping is a big difference between first and second edition, obviously. The other one...
That's why Rainer really liked it.
Oh, yeah. No.
That's why he only thinks 5 to 9-year-olds will enjoy it.
Yeah, that poo humor. Like, it really does hit a threshold. Past the age of 9, it's not nearly as funny.
No.
There's various references to gnomes.
No.
Gnomes.
Really?
Now, this was a word that Tolkien kind of used interchangeably.
For hobbits?
No.
Dwarves?
No.
The
other one.
Orcs?
No. The other one.
Humans? Men's?
No.
Gandalf?
You're literally getting everyone but the one it is.
Hold on. How am I so far off base? Fairies?
Sure. Yeah.
Trolls?
No.
Elves?
Yes.
No.
There we go. Yeah.
That's dumb. Gnomes are not elves.
Well, sure. In our conception of them now.
Dumb.
Okay.
Tell me how Smaug poops and don't call elves gnomes.
Well, that's why he changed it.
Thank you.
That's why he changed it.
I'm glad that I was able to travel into the past and tell him.
Specifically he changes references to gnomish things and gnomes to high elves. So this was a thing he used to reference like the Noldoran elves.
Okay.
Gnomish. He described them as gnomes and gnomish. So he changes that and he sort of codifies like, okay, no, these are what elves are. There's also various references to like sailing across the sea that he kind of changes to, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but because then he was like, well, okay, across the sea is going to be Valinor and
Got
this
it.
whole thing. So he changes it to just like, I think he says like sailing to other shores. Just making it a little bit more.
So you're saying when he wrote this, he did not realize it was connected with what he was doing in the Silmarillion, essentially.
It just wasn't, at all.
Right. He just was writing it as like a stopgap or just in between writing the lore and the mythology.
It was just a completely separate endeavor. It was,
So
I'm going to write a
interesting.
kid's story.
Interesting.
And then he went, okay, I could tie this in.
Yeah.
How would I do that?
And what do I need to delete in order to do that?
Well, or add, yeah. So the other one, the other big change, or not big change, but he adds in to the dwarvish element the lineage of Thorin. So in the first edition, it's just Thorin is like, oh, my grandfather. That's it. And so he adds in, all right, Thror is his grandfather. He's related to Thrain.
And then did they figure out Durin during this time too?
Yes.
Durin during this time. Did Durin exist before this?
I don't know, but that I don't know, like if that was something he developed when he was trying to connect these, or if he already had those dwarvish lineage names. I'm not super versed on the timeline of exactly what came when in terms of his development of the lore and the mythology.
Got it.
But,
you're supposed to be the expert, but okay.
Well, there's so many facets. So
You couldn't
Tolkien's
have anticipated me asking all these questions.
Well, and that's just not something I'm super interested in. In terms of versus like the history of the world that he created. There are some people who are experts on like, in this year he wrote this and changed it. Like
right.
It's go read history of Middle Earth. Like,
and if you're an expert, we'd love to have you on.
Sure.
If you're nice and didn't vote for Trump.
Sure. I don't care about that.
Yes, you do, right? If someone, you don't want them on their podcast if they did.
I would have them on.
Okay. Okay.
If they're cool.
Gotcha.
Okay, so and then he also adds in the idea of Azog being the one to kill Thror, and fleshes out the whole idea of the Goblin Wars, Moria being taken over. Moria was in the first edition, but he fleshes that out a little bit more to give more history and more context to the war.
Got it.
There. So many differences between those editions, but the thing I like the most is that in The Lord of the Rings, and if you remember when I was reading this, during the Council of Elrond chapter, Bilbo specifically recounts the tale of finding the ring, and it's referenced when in his conversations with Gandalf earlier. And
Your story has a ring of truth. Doesn't it ring true, Bilbo?
Okay. The cheesiest thing.
Amazing.
Go listen to our Rankin and Bass episode if you haven't. So he specifically references he makes the difference between the first edition and the second edition of The Hobbit into something that is part of the world. In that, when Bilbo originally wrote There and Back Again, and then recounted the tale to Gandalf and Frodo, the first edition version was what he originally told, because of the influence of the ring and him not wanting to seem like such a bad guy.
Oh. But he wasn't. Okay, I'm sorry. No. I want you to finish your thought.
I did.
Oh, well, good. I had a good instinct then. Does he feel like a bad guy in the second telling of it?
Maybe I take that back. I think there is an element of wanting to seem like
mysterious or like successful as a thief, right?
No, I think it's the effect of the ring is that you want to justify your ownership. So in the case of, Isildur, well, this is a wereguild because my father died and so I'm claiming this, and I have a justifiable reason to claim it, as opposed to I'm stealing this,
right?
So there's a justification. So for Bilbo, instead of just like, oh, I found it on the floor and I stole it from Gollum, it's no, I won this as a prize, and I have a reason, and there is a rule of law, and that we respect the riddle game rules because it's this ancient tradition. So here's my claim. I'm laying claim to the ring through this. Whether that claim is real or not. That's the influence of the ring is it leads the owner and the bearer to justify why their rightful claim is they have the rightful claim. For Gollum, it's my birthday present. It was, I deserve this because it was my birthday, So every person.
Oh, that's interesting.
And for Frodo, it's the airship, or not airship. It was passed down to him as Bilbo's.
He never wanted it though.
No, but that's his claim to it.
I see.
So every bearer of the ring has a different
reason why they could keep it.
Yeah, whether or not how true it is. Like Gollum's is obviously the most dubious. Bilbo's that technically wasn't. I
think he had to get out of there. He was going to get killed.
Yes, but he didn't win it as a prize. He just straight up stole it. But that's why his version of the tale is I had a claim to it. Isildur's is, I think, probably the most, well, besides Frodo's. Because Frodo's, it was Bilbo's, technically, and then it just got passed down to him. And then Isildur's is maybe the next most believable of okay, I guess you could claim this as a wereguild.
Yeah, but I hate it.
Well, sure. Obviously, we all know.
Isildur, no!
We're yelling at the screen. We're going to be yelling at the screen.
We're gonna be
in a few years. No, dude, just throw it in.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. Well, no, he's dead. So.
Oh yeah, R.I.P.
R.I.P. Yeah. Barrick's gonna do it instead.
Yeah.
This is Barrick. No, the love of my life is dead. Jeez. So, any other significant differences or information about the creation of the Hobbit to share?
Well, so I didn't get to the final point of the Council of Elrond thing. So you have the original version of the story that was the one he wrote down, but then the one that Bilbo actually ends up telling the council and everybody when it comes to it is the quote unquote real version, which is the second edition version, which for our benefit as readers, Tolkien includes in the updated edition. So it's this is the real thing. But I think it's clever to make it make sense in universe why there are two different versions. So if you were someone who only had the first edition or read it right when it came out, and then you immediately go and read your copy of Lord of the Rings, this new story, you're not confused. Right? So whether or not you had the first or the second edition, it makes sense. And that's I think brilliant. Because if you remember, oh yeah, Gollum, Bilbo wins the thing, and then it goes, well, Bilbo told the real version of the story. Oh wait, what?
Yeah.
There's a real version? But then if you had the second edition, it's oh yeah, cool. It just makes sense. So he did a really cool thing, I think, of making whichever version you knew of the Riddles in the Dark chapter, whichever version you knew, it makes sense.
I love that.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's the people that read that first version, they have a unique experience too, that way. Because retconning isn't anything new and anything old. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
But I do love that piece of history. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I guess we'll talk about my impressions of how the story itself is written when we go through the book next week. But overall, what is the significance of The Hobbit for you? Where does it land and the importance of this world to you? Do you like it overall? Do you feel like you need it in order to experience the world, or vice? Where do you land with it?
Well, I think I'm excuse me. I think I'm unique among Tolkien fans, or atypical among Tolkien fans, where I think for a lot of people, their first introduction to his world is through The Hobbit.
Right.
Because it is a kid's book, like we said. And so it's something you read in school, maybe. You're assigned. That was not my experience. My experience was The Silmarillion first. So I personally don't think you need to like start at The Hobbit. Like
Sure.
if you're not a kid and you're like
What if you're a kid at heart, Alex?
well, then God bless you.
Coming from the atheist, that's a big deal.
Yes. Well, you know.
Tolkien bless you.
Tolkien bless you. I think you don't need to start at The Hobbit in terms of like getting a sense of the world. And there are like since we're rereading The Hobbit together, you're seeing a lot of differences.
Yeah.
Since we read Fellowship and then we went back to The Hobbit. So I don't necessarily know if it's like the best entry point for an adult who is coming into this.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or, someone who's above the age of 9. But I think it's a fun story. It's a really quick read. Like you can read it in an evening. If you're just like sitting down and
yeah, I can see that. I mean, the all night, but I guess some people are different readers. The reason why it was really impactful to me is because I had to really struggle through that first chapter. I really was resentful of it, and then it was the first time I was like all in and tore through it, much like Rainer did. Just
yes.
Vociferously. What is a vociferous? What does that mean?
Just like rabidly.
That's exactly what I meant.
Excitedly.
That's exactly what I meant.
What you didn't like when they start talking about his Tookish side and Bullroarer Took and
I really understood it all. It's just that it felt like it was derivative and
of what?
Of all the other children's books I've ever read. And I felt like it was over-explanatory, and I felt like it was just tedious,
Like, get to the action. Come on.
In a educational and academic way, I just felt like he belabored the point for too long. So once I finally understood what the Took and the Baggins differences were, I felt like he didn't need to elaborate anymore. And 12-year-old Jessica really understood that. Have you gotten my whole joke here that I actually don't know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
I was just dumb at age 12 and didn't care.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're like, where's the adventure?
Well, not even. I didn't know what I was in for.
Right.
At all. And he's explaining 17 dwarf names over and over again. I just didn't understand.
Okay.
And it felt so. I think the first chapter is like 20 pages or something like that. Maybe 30.
Yeah. I don't know.
It felt like 30 because I would count
Sure.
each length of chapters. This is the first time I'm experiencing this too. The length
because
of
this
chapters.
is your first like real book.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what on earth is happening? No
Right.
one prepared me. Like, now, Jessica, this is what a book is.
Right. You'd like, I would say, if it's your first like chapter book.
No,
Probably...
I mean, I read Babysitter's Little Sisters Club, but each chapter was 5 pages.
Excuse me, what?
Babysitter's Club.
Okay.
Do-do-do-do.
You said Little Sisters.
They had a Little Sisters version.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
I thought that was just a classic
Nope.
Jess slip of the tongue.
Babysitter's Little Sisters.
So this was like before you graduate to Babysitter's Club.
100%.
It was like the junior...
And it mostly centered around, unfortunately, a girl named Karen, who was,
Oh.
they were all little sisters of the babysitters. And Karen's family, I don't remember who's her older sister, but they were mostly dealing with divorce.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Wait, so was this like a after-school special type?
Kinda.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, a 10-year-old just trying to kick around and figure it out and going from mom's house to dad's house and having 2 sets of clothes and...
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Why?
It was talking about real life.
Sure, I guess.
And I read those.
Very different.
Very different. So they were books. They were about 80 pages.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But they were great. I loved them, at least.
Sure.
And, So yeah, it took me a long time to understand that there were actual other books out there.
Yeah. What if they had described the differences between the Tooks and the Bagginses, but through the lens of they were separated? Would you think it would have hooked you more?
I don't know why it would have, but yes, the drama would have been in. I would have, it would have gone, yeah. And then they go to babysit the kids on the other side of Hobbiton.
Yeah.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah, Bilbo has to cross the Brandywine when he,
yeah, because
his dad Bungo has him on the weekends.
100%. Because I think their town was like Brady Brook or Windy Brook or something like that. It was all there. They could have easily layered on the Hobbit to that. Karen could have definitely looked like a Hobbit and not being accepted at school. And I would have definitely related to that.
Yeah.
Alex, anything else you'd like to share with our lovely audience?
About the Hobbit or just in general?
In general?
I think, as we were talking about, if you've not, for whatever reason, maybe there are people listening who haven't read any of the books, right? Maybe they've just seen the movies. I would say don't feel like you have to start with The Hobbit. Start wherever you want. What
if you never read The Hobbit?
Then you never read The Hobbit. I think it's a good fun book. There's a lot of good stuff in it. It's a great story. It is a little bit like you see the seams of this is a kid's book. So if you're not into that, maybe it'll be a little bit of in those moments, a slog to get through. But I think it
gets out of there real quickly. Though.
Exactly. And it returns to those kiddie kind of moments. Sometimes, occasionally, like a breaking the fourth wall thing. But I think it's fun.
I agree.
When the narrator cuts in. But don't feel like you have to start with The Hobbit. Start wherever, with whatever calls to you. If you're like, I really want to start with the Silmarillion, go for it.
Doubtful.
Okay. If you're like, I really want to just dive into Lord of the Rings, go for it. Especially with, now that we have representations of parts of the Silmarillion, the Lord of the Rings, and the Hobbit on film, like if you've seen all those, whichever one calls to you most. Although I would say the Hobbit trilogy, least representative of the source material in terms of the adaptation. There's fun moments though. So yeah, that's all I would say. But we're, if you want to read The Hobbit, we're going to be, I think going more in depth, like chapter by chapter, going through it next week. And then, we'll be diving into the Peter Jackson films. Sure. We'll see how we split those up, but I'm excited about those. And are we going to do extended? We think we should do extended.
I think we should do extended. Yeah. And again, like we're not just trying to like stretch out content for content's sake. It's available. So we're just going to talk about it for as long as it makes sense and then carry on to the next episode. So maybe it might be 2 episodes per movie. We just don't know yet until we watch it.
Yeah. Well, I think it'll probably end up, we'll split it up.
Unfortunately.
Look, we had hour-long episodes of Rings of Power, and sometimes the episodes were longer than an hour.
It was more interesting, though, just to be fair.
Oh, there's a lot to talk about.
Okay, good.
Like, for good or bad, there's a lot of things happening in the Hobbit movies, so there will be plenty to talk about.
I look forward to that then.
Yeah, there will be plenty to talk about.
Just want to shout out to a couple friends of the podcast, a couple other fellow podcasters who have been really supportive of us. We've got Geeks with Shields, if you're into Warhammer. Our friend Scott Rubin's on there. Fabian Kelly's on there sometimes. And they're very supportive. They're in our Twitch chat occasionally too, so give them a listen, a subscribe. And the other Tolkien podcast, we were on Voices of Arda with Nubeta,
Yes.
Dubeta, and Callie Cosplay, and that was awesome. We'll have them on eventually.
Yeah.
So give them a follow. Their video podcasts on YouTube, and The Mouth of Sauron, who does a really funny, like cheeky podcast, and just really gives you exactly how they feel about things in a very funny way. A really fun delivery. What I like about all these different ways you can enjoy this world is everyone has a different voice that they contribute, and ours is whatever this was today. What's the different ways they can find us?
They can go to twitter.com/
Wait, what's Twitter?
What?
What's Twitter?
Oh, it's this amazing new site by Elon Musk. Twitter.com/Pod of the Rings. They can go to patreon.com/Pod of the Rings if they want to support financially, get a few cool benefits.
Please
depending
support.
on depending on what tier you sign up at. No one's claimed that One Ring tier yet. There is an
you're a producer and you get a shirt.
Yeah, an exclusive T-shirt that no one else will ever own.
Unless you stop becoming a producer. Unless you stop being the one.
It can be a revolving door. The One Ring has had many owners, and you can lay your claim to it today at patreon.com.
You certainly can.
/Pot of the Rings. You can
Certainly can.
Certainly can. Oh, man. It's the good place is...
Oh, shirt.
Oh, shirt. What else? They can go to Instagram, POTR pod on Instagram. Some dank memes being shared over there.
Yeah, that's totally right.
Podcastoftherings.com for everything else.
Absolutely. Go to twitch.com/Solkatu, SOLKATTU, to see him dork out about Lord of the Rings or play Magic. And I'm at twitch.tv/Jessica Nerdy, where I'm just gonna it's not PG-13, folks, so
no, that's the After Dark rated R. And also
proceed with caution.
We're gonna be doing the watch along because I've already done the first 2 Hobbits. So on my Twitch, I don't know if it's gonna be on my Twitch or on my Discord, which is linked on the Twitch, but we're gonna be doing a watch along of the 3rd Hobbit. So check that out if you want to be a part of that. Yeah,
Alex is in my Discord. So we link to my Discord on this show just because I'm selfish. But we do have fun, rousing conversations, mostly making fun of me and my choices that I make during this podcast. So if you're interested in having a fun little community under your belt, we're here.
The leaf did not wake the bell.
It did. Good. Well, until next week, Alex.
May our roads meet again.